the book related to the sacramental law in the church. So this chapter of the Code of Canon Law give us an introduction of all the sacraments and a general definition of the sacraments, and then treats every sacrament individually with the definition and the requirements for the receiving of the sacraments, and then all the other stipulations regarding who is going to preside the sacrament, what are the conditions, or what are the challenges, the general ones, because most of the sacraments are laity treated by liturgical documents. So the Code of Canon Law only gave us kind of the basic, and then we have to find a specific legislation for every sacrament in further liturgical documents, which are not necessarily completely canonical, but they are almost spiritual and liturgical. So, so this book covers from Canon 840 to Canon 1204. So it's one of the most extensive. It's one of the most extensive chapters of the Code of Canon Law, along with book number 2, which is the book that we already studied about the rights and duties of the Christian faith. So let's begin then. So this is the general structure that is presented in this book. So we have all the first part. There are 3 parts in this chapter. The first part are the sacraments in general. So the general definition of the sacraments and a reference to the sacrament of initiation. What about the sacramental preparation? The communicatio in sacris, which is very important, is when and where Catholics that are not people that are not Catholic, how they can receive sacraments in the Catholic Church. That we call it the communicatio in sacris. And then we have some regulations how to celebrate sacraments under condition. So let's begin with then that's the first part. Then the second part treats every sacrament individually, and then we have the other parts that speak about the other acts of worship that are not sacraments, and then the third part that speak about the sacred places and sacred times. So we are going to explore every and each one of them. So let's begin with the definition of the sacrament, and if you please open the code on Canon 840. So this is the biggest book of canon law, because it's not only the text, but it's the commentary. So that's why it's very good when you are doing research, because you have all the referrals to other documents. So if you please read the definition of the sacrament.
The sacraments of the New Testament, instituted by Christ the Lord and entrusted by the Church, as they are actions of Christ and the Church, stand out as the signs and means by which the faith is expressed and strengthened, worship is rendered to God, and the sanctification of humankind is effected. And they thus contribute to the highest degree to the establishment, the strengthening, and the manifestation of ecclesial communion. Therefore, both the sacred ministers and the rest of the Christian faithful must employ the greatest reverence and the necessary diligence in their celebration.
Sometimes this text is a little abbreviated because of the space I have to manage, but you can follow here too. So, is there any difference between the definition of the sacrament you already learned when you were a child and this definition? Do you remember the definition of the sacraments when you were when you learned it from your catechism? You don't?
Outward sign of
What is the definition?
It's an outward sign of invisible grace.
Okay, okay. So, any other definition that you remember when you were a child? I remember when the word sacrament comes to my mind, I always remember that definition because we have to learn it by memory. So they are the invisible grace of God given to all of us for our sanctification. So so from there then we move to this one, which is a much more elaborate definition, because basically the sacraments of the New Testament were instituted by Christ the Lord and entrusted to the church. That's why through this book they always refer that the main authority to give regulations about the requirements of the sacraments are the church, not at the high. I mean the high church, not the Pope and the bishops, and only in certain areas. U.S. Like a Catholic Conference of Bishops, like the U.S. Conference of Bishops for us, they can legislate in particular areas. Now, if you locate Canon 842, then they speak about the sacraments of initiation. And if you read, please, let's say Canon 842.
A person who has not received baptism cannot be admitted validly to the other sacraments. The sacraments of baptism, confirmation, and the Most Holy Eucharist are interrelated in such a way that they are required for full Christian initiation.
That becomes important because we come to situations where we do not know if this person has been baptized. We will find out, when you run the RCI program, we do not know if this person is baptized. So you have to resolve that issue from the beginning, if this person was baptized or not, if the baptism he or she had was a valid baptism, or if it was valid, then this person doesn't need to be baptized again, or if the baptism you're still in doubt, then maybe the person can be baptized under conditions. You have to resolve that in order to allow the person to receive the other sacraments. If someone receive other sacraments and after all that we find out that the person is not baptized, the sacraments that they have been received, they are not valid because the first one that has to be received is the sacrament of baptism, and after that the other sacraments of initiation, and then after that the rest of the sacraments in the church. But the sacraments of initiation they have to be clear that at least the first one, baptism, has been received. Now in Canon 843 it speaks on sacramental preparation. So if you please read Canon 843.
Sacred ministers cannot deny the sacraments to those who seek them at appropriate times, are properly disposed, and are not forbidden by the law from receiving them. Pastors of souls and other members of the Christian faithful, according to their respective ecclesiastical function, have the duty to take care that those who seek the sacraments are prepared to receive them by proper evangelization and catechetical instruction attentive to the norms issued by a competent authority.
So there are three conditions, three requirements to receive the sacraments. So did you capture that? There were three elements that they were mentioned there. So if you read the first part of that canon 843, the three elements that need to be necessary for a person to receive a sacrament.
Appropriate times, properly disposed, and not prohibited by law.
Exactly. So appropriate times, properly disposed, and not prohibited by law. Those are the three conditions that has to be in place for a person to receive the sacrament.
What's the second one?
What's the
Properly disposed.
Properly
Disposed.
See how there? Properly disposed, appropriate time.
Appropriate times is first, properly disposed is second, and not prohibited is third.
So those are the three initial conditions that the person needs to acquire in order to request the sacrament. But after that, every particular sacrament has a particular and specific preparation. The sacrament of baptism and first communion, and reconciliation, and marriage. Every sacrament in particular has a preparation, unless you are a part of the RCIA program where you are preparing yourself for a full initiation into the church. Is when the preparation is more intensive, but is directed to those three particular sacraments of initiation. Now, we all know that. So we are Catholics. We receive our sacraments in the Catholic Church. We don't go to the Episcopal Church to receive our sacraments, or we don't go to the Baptist Church. But it happened that sometimes Catholics that are not necessarily in full communion with the Catholic Church come to us to receive the sacraments, or we go to them to receive the sacrament. So that action, that interaction between churches is called in sacramental law communicatio in sacris. When Catholics can receive sacraments in another church, and when Catholics that are in full communion with the Catholic Church can receive sacraments from us, we call it that communicatio in sacris, which is the communication of the sacred. And then those stipulations are listed in Canon 844. So if you please read Canon 844.
So the Canon 844 has a paragraph, and there's 1, 2,
Yes,
3, 4
exactly.
subparagraphs.
So
this is long.
We'll read one by one.
First one, Catholic ministers administer the sacraments licitly to Catholic members of the Christian faithful alone, who likewise receive them licitly from Catholic ministers alone, without prejudice to the prescripts of 2, 3, 4 of this canon and can. Okay,
so that's the regular norm. We receive the sacraments from our ministers, and our ministers administer those sacraments to us. Then we have the exceptions. So if you read the next one, please.
Whenever necessity requires it, or true spiritual advantage suggests it, and provided that danger of error or indifference of them is avoided, the Christian faithful for whom it is physically or morally impossible to approach a Catholic minister are permitted to receive the sacraments of penance, Eucharist, and anointing of the sick from non-Catholic ministers in whose churches these sacraments are valid.
Okay, so that is the first exception, but you read clearly why we are allowed to do that, and it's not everything. It's just these particular sacraments. When in danger of death, or when it's impossible to reach your own minister, then you are allowed to receive the sacrament of penance, communion, and anointing of the sick from those ministers where those sacraments are valid. So in which churches that would be more or less the main Christian churches closest to the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Episcopal Church, the Lutheran Church, those type of churches, not these modern mega churches.
Mormons?
Yeah. Mormons, no. So anyway, so not from because in their church these sacraments are not valid. Their list of sacraments, they look similar than ours, but they are not the same. So we are not allowed to receive communion in the Mormon Church. We are not. I don't believe they have the sacrament of penance itself, and they have the sacrament of the anointing of the sick. They have some sort of sacrament, of action. They call it the circle of prayer or something like that. But it's not necessarily. So in their church, first of all, our sacraments are not valid in their church, and then second, their sacraments are not exactly the same like that. So the Mormon Church is not included in that list. Okay, so that's the first exception. Now the next one.
Catholic ministers administer the sacraments of penance, Eucharist, and anointing of the sick illicitly to members of Eastern churches which do not have full communion with the Catholic Church, if they seek such on their own accord and are properly disposed. This is also valid for members of other churches which in the judgment of the Apostolic See are in the same conditions in regard to the sacraments as though these Eastern churches.
Okay, so the members of the Eastern churches can receive the sacraments from us, those particular ones, penance, Eucharist, and anointing of the sick. When for them they cannot reach their own minister, it happens when members of the Eastern churches are, for example, here. Remember the long list of Eastern churches we mentioned in our first class? I don't think we have a minister from the Belarusian church here in Utah. Or do we have a minister from the Coptic church? I don't think so. Once in a while we have a Syro Malabar. Once in a while, we have from others. We have the Maronites. We have all the Byzantine rites. We have some sort closer. So those ones are allowed to receive those sacraments in our church. There are some members of those Eastern churches, for example, in Logan, and there is no minister for them in the state of Utah. So they go and receive communion in our Catholic church in Logan. And the pastor is aware of that. So that is possible. What is the next exception?
If the danger of death is present, or if in the judgment of the diocesan bishop or conference of bishops some other grave necessity urges it, Catholic ministers administer the same sacrament illicitly to other Christians not having full communion with the Catholic Church, who cannot approach a minister of their own community and who seek such on their own accord, provided that the manifest Catholic faith in respect to these sacraments are properly disposed.
Oh, okay. So in danger of death, they can approach us at their own accord. That means by their own initiative.
We don't solicit them; they come to us.
Exactly. We don't tell them to come. They come to us by their free will, because they feel it's a spiritual need, and this paragraph said in danger of death. In danger of death, it doesn't say at any time, whenever you want. It says in danger of death in those particular conditions. Okay, and the next one, please.
For the cases mentioned in 2, 3, and 4, the diocesan bishop or conference of bishops is not to issue general norms except after consultation at least with the local competent authority of the interested non-Catholic church community.
Which one will be those Catholic churches not in full communion with the Catholic Church? What will be those Christian churches not in full communion with the Catholic Church?
American church.
Greek Orthodox.
The Greek Orthodox.
Yeah.
The American church is not one of them.
Yeah.
So the Greek Orthodox Church, why they are not in full communion with the Catholic Church?
The Pope.
Exactly, because they don't follow the obedience of the Supreme Pontiff. Mm-hmm.
So this last weekend, I found myself, last weekend I was in Hong Kong, and it was Sunday, and I tried desperately to go to a Catholic church, and so I talked to the concierge who spoke English, and I'm talking to Chinese and English, and they wrote down on a card the Catholic church, and I took a cab, and I went there, and it wasn't a Catholic church.
Oh, what's it?
So I found another church, and it was St. Mary's, and I took another cab to St. Mary's, and it's Episcopal church.
Oh, it wasn't.
And I'm sitting in this Episcopal church, and I'm going, am I sinning by taking communion?
No.
And so, how, I'm a pretty devout Catholic, and I don't know which ones are good and which ones, what are the rule of thumb? Rule of thumb if you're going to another church, when you can or cannot.
So you probably didn't get a very good concierge in your hotel.
No, I did not.
Probably. But it's a very big and very vibrant Catholic church in Hong Kong, which is very famous all over the world. And it's located, I have not been in Hong Kong, but I have seen pictures. It's located in this particular hill, and they have, I don't know, like 8 masses on Sunday in every single language. So it's very famous. It's very famous. Actually, Bishop Solis, his brother is part of one of those that manage that church in Hong Kong. So anyway, so you probably didn't get a very good concert, but there is a Catholic church in Hong Kong that is very famous all over the world. You know, it's very famous. However, in this particular case, you were covered by one of those exceptions because you were not physically able to find your church. So did you receive communion in the Episcopal Church? Okay, so it's one of those is when you don't commit any sin if you receive communion from them.
His intent was correct.
Exactly.
He
So,
was trying to find the church.
exactly.
He ended up in the wrong church. You were no fault of his own.
You were physically
Yeah.
intended to find your
Yeah.
church. That communion cost you probably $50 with all those taxes and cabs you have to take anyway. So, but that's one of those situations where we can do that. It is very difficult to say that if you were in Rome. It will not apply. It will not apply if you were in Rome, or if you were in other church in other cities that are predominantly Catholic. Paris, London, you can find Catholic churches pretty much easily, in those cities. But in those Asian countries, it's probably difficult. But anyway, but keep in mind, I have to find that church for you in Hong Kong. So next time you go there. I know it's in this hill. It's very beautiful and it's very famous, and they have all this diversity of ministries. They have I don't know how many priests there in different languages. They celebrate mass like 8 different languages on Sunday, beginning like at 7:30, and it's every.
It's the Immaculate Conception.
Immaculate Conception.
The Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception.
Oh, okay, yeah, probably.
I feel silly now.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. I don't. I know it exists, and I have come across to
It
priests
could
that
be
work in
another
that church.
one, that's the one that.
I know it's more than one, but this is very famous. So it's probably that one because the cathedral is probably the one I'm referring to. Okay, so in reference to that communicatio in sacris, so the most important thing to know is that there are certain windows, certain doors that we can use to access the sacraments where we are impeded to receive it from our ministers and from other people to come to us. Some Catholics, like here in Utah, feel very attracted to go to Mass at Father Gibran, forgot the name.
St.
St. Jude's. Many Catholics, many Roman Catholics feel attracted to go to Mass there, and we can. We don't have any impediment to receive sacraments there or to attend Mass because they are in full communion with the Catholic Church. So because they like the spirituality, they like the liturgy. So anyway. So that's something you have to keep in mind. If they are Catholic churches in full communion with us, then we can receive any sacraments from them. Now let's explore Canon 845 that talks about the sacraments under condition.
The sacraments of baptism, confirmation, and orders cannot be repeated since they imprint a character. If after diligent investigation there is still a prudent doubt whether these sacraments mentioned in paragraph 1 have been truly or validly conferred, they are to be conferred conditionally.
Exactly. So what will be the difference between a sacrament administered in a normal way and a sacrament administered under condition? When you are, what will be the difference?
That actually happened to me for my baptism.
I was gonna say baptism.
So what is the difference? What is the technical difference? Is there any technical difference? Do they do it differently?
No.
It's the same thing, but
Is-
its
is-
effect is different because you've been previously baptized, there was no effect. But if you weren't previously baptized, full effect.
So, technically speaking, there is no difference. The only difference is one word that you introduce when you baptize the person. I baptize you conditionally in the name of the Father. That's the only difference. But but the liturgy is the same, the rite is the same, and the effects are the same. So it's just that's the only difference. We don't have a different rite to administer a sacrament under condition. No, it's exactly the same like you were going to baptize somebody else normally. You just introduce that word, and some of the rituals they have the 2 paragraphs if you are baptizing conditionally, and it's the same paragraph with just that little word, I baptize you conditionally. That's all. That's all it is. But it's exactly the same. So this is I just selected these canons from that general introduction to the sacraments, and after this, then it comes all this succession of canons addressing every single sacrament in particular. So let's see if I didn't follow the order of this one, but I follow rather the order of the guideline that we have there, the program. So now. What we are going to do now is what I said, how I'm going to cover the 7 sacraments in an hour and a half. So what I decided is, from every sacrament, we are going to read the definition, and we are going to read one more paragraph for every sacrament. And then that will certainly will create some dialogue between us. And then we know we have so many other canons to read there, but for a specific circumstances. So we are going to address every single one of the sacraments. So those sacraments are covered from Canon 850, 849 to from 1165. So that's the extension of the content of that legislation. So let's begin with the sacrament of baptism. So let's read the definition of baptism. Only canon. Who is the next one? So let's read the definition. I think I put there.
Okay.
849. So baptism. So if we read the definition of baptism,
849.
849.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Baptism is the gate to the sacraments, necessary for salvation in fact, or at least in intention, by which men and women are freed from their sins, are reborn as children of God, and configured to Christ by an indelible character, are incorporated into the church, and is validly conferred only by washing with true water, together with the required form of words.
Okay.
So definitely.
So. Anything else?
No, that's it.
That's the commentary.
Yeah.
The canon is just the one
Right.
involved, and then the commentary. So you can see that definition tells us what is the sacrament of baptism, the effects, and then how to administer a valid baptism. It's just a condensed definition with those 3 elements. The baptism is the gateway to the Christian life, the effects of salvation, on the faithful, and then who can administer and how to administer the water and the words. So when they say water, how can you read the last part about the water and the words?
Incorporated in the church is validly conferred only by washing with true water, together with the required form of word.
Okay, so what are those required form of words?
Trinity.
The Trinity. So the water and the Trinitarian formula, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Are there any requirements for the water? Can it doesn't have to be holy water, right? Any water?
Well, it can be any water, but the water is blessed before the celebration of the sacrament. So if you by the priest or by the deacon, so it's any water can be used. But
What about impending death?
what do you mean impending death?
Someone's dying, or you're like an EMT, and can you, I guess,
I was told saliva.
I was just about to say that. I
All
was
right
told,
things.
one priest told me if there's nothing
Or nothing
in that
else.
situation,
Oh, I mean you mean
Yeah.
if you cannot find water at all?
Yeah. Exactly.
saliva.
Yes, that can be, that's water. That's water. Sometimes you can get water from plants, at least one drop, or two.
Now you're talking liquid.
Yeah, so anyway, but you probably are not going to be in that situation that you cannot find a little bit of water, So, but in general, any filtered water is proper to use. I will not use any flavored water. I will not use any of those. Just pure filtered water. Yeah, that would be with the Trinitarian formula. So now, in reference to the sacrament of baptism, so let's explore Canon 8. I think it's 868. Can I bring my writing?
The next one after definitions was 849, then 879.
No, yeah, but I'm just because I'm going to the requirements. So that the next one is for the sacrament of for the next.
Will you read that? Canon 868, for the licit baptism of an infant, it is necessary that one, the parents or at least one of them, or the person who lawfully takes their place gives consent. Number two, that there be a founded hope that the infant will be brought up in the Catholic religion. If such a hope is altogether lacking, the baptism is to be put off according to the prescriptions of particular law, and the parents are to be informed of the reason. Secondly, the infant of Catholic parents, in fact of non-Catholic parents also, who is in danger of death, is licitly baptized even against the will of the parents. That's the extent of that.
Okay. So what is the first word that you read in that canon?
One.
For?
Listen, for ballot, right? I mean,
Yeah, but the
parents
same.
mo-
By read the first word for the
Infant.
licit baptism.
for the licit. It doesn't say for the valid. So remember that we have that distinction when we study general knowledge, the validity, what is validity and what is licitude. So for the list, that means if the sacrament of baptism is administered regularly with water and with the words, but against any of these is still valid. So what it says there is if an infant is going to be baptized, at least one of the parents has to be in agreement. So at least one. So what about if the sacrament is administered and none of the parents were in agreement? Is the baptism valid or not?
The child is close to death.
It's valid if you.
Not necessarily. Let's say it's not in danger of death.
It's valid if you perform it.
It's valid. It's still valid. So the canon is for the licitude of the sacrament, not for the validity. So you're going to find this situation more or less, a few times in your ministry in the parishes. Somebody comes to celebrate the baptism, but one of the parents is against it. Let's say it's a Catholic that doesn't practice anymore and doesn't care and he doesn't want the child to be baptized. Or let's say it's not a Catholic, it's a Mormon or it's a Christian and he doesn't want the child to be baptized. So how you deal with that? If you baptize the child, at least one of the parents is in agreement. So if you baptize the child, then you are fine, because at least that's what the law requires. But how you handle that? Would you do it or would you not? What would be your approach?
I think I would obviously have to sit down with the parents first,
Uh-huh.
try to explain to them.
Okay.
I think some of the canon doesn't, I don't know if you use the right word, but it doesn't take into consideration secular issues or divorce.
Mm-hmm.
It's assuming the parents are married, okay, but you have this woman who has the legal custody of the child.
Exactly, yeah.
Dad,
Mhm.
she's LDS.
Mhm.
Dad, who's divorced, who does not have it,
Mhm.
is Catholic, wants it baptized. As far as the Catholic Church is concerned, he has as much say as the woman does as far as illicit baptism.
Mhm.
So that's a tough one. Here's
Yes,
a mom
it is,
who,
yes, it is.
the mom, the dad
Yes, it
wants
is.
it. Dad's gonna sneak around her back and get it, but
Exactly.
as
that.
far as validity and
Mhm.
validity, it's valid.
Exactly.
But it looks
No,
a
no,
black eye
no, no,
on-
no,
a
no
black eye
matter,
on the
no matter
parents.
how you celebrate the
Yeah.
sacrament, with both parents in agreement or one in disagreement, if you celebrate the sacrament validly using the water and the Trinitarian formula, the sacrament is still valid. However, what will be the effect of that? The child is baptized, I mean, that is valid, but then what will be the effect on that particular couple, on that particular family?
One of the requirements is that there has to be a likelihood the child's going to be raised in the faith,
There you go, yeah.
and that would be present.
Exactly.
So the baptism's still valid, it's not illicit.
So like a grandmother, is watching the grandkids one weekend, and the parents have lost their faith, and he takes the grandchild to
Exactly,
get
that's the
baptized.
example I was going to put,
And then, so it would be valid but not licit.
exactly.
Well,
will
that
be-
shouldn't happen because.
That shouldn't happen.
Yes,
You have-
but that shouldn't happen, but it happens. But if it happens, the sacrament is valid. The sacrament is valid, it's still valid.
But
Yes.
the deacon or the priest should not do it because the
Exactly,
grandmother, the
exactly.
grandmother is not the
So,
parent.
so in those particular cases, my approach always has been to delay the celebration until a better time, to try to reach an agreement with the parents.
Is the church ever in a financial liability when something like this happens? Has there ever been a situation where say, I'm gonna sue you?
Oh, yes, they always do that, but the court is going to take something like that.
Yeah,
They don't,
they don't.
they don't because they say.
Well, that's
"Well,
because,
something you have to
that's
respond."
because you believe it or you don't. If you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
believe it, it
Then
doesn't
it's
You gotta
matter.
prove harm.
Then what's the point?
You know, it's
Right.
like the LDS do baptisms for the dead against, all these names.
I'm just
But
wondering.
it doesn't ask anybody's permission.
I'm just,
Well, everybody says, well, what's the big deal? It doesn't mean anything to us.
Yeah, if you,
It's still not right.
I was just
That would
wondering.
make me
it's still not right, no. but if you don't believe it, then how that's going to affect your life.
yeah.
So, but that is a clear example. It doesn't happen here in the US that much, but it happens in Latin America a lot. That the parents don't care for the church anymore, and grandma is taking care of the children on a weekend, and grandma takes the child to the church and baptizes the child.
That
Now,
happens a
the-
lot with First Communion. I get a lot of grandparents who
Really?
want to enroll and I'm like, you can't.
Yeah.
So can the minister, the deacon or the priest get in trouble with his diocesan for doing an illicit baptism?
It happens that people complains, why this deacon, this priest baptized my child and I wasn't there. My husband took it to this church and I wasn't there. We investigate. We investigate if the minister was truly aware of that situation. In most cases, they are not. They say, the father came with all these people, that the mother wasn't there, we didn't ask much, everything seemed normal, and sometimes they say the mother is not here, the mother is deployed, whatever, they say different things. So we take into consideration if the minister, or sometimes it's the person that organized the preparation and all that managed all that part, the priest or the deacon, so that just showed up to do the celebration. So we took into consideration if the minister was aware of all that situation. But my first approach is to delay the baptism until you can reach a better agreement between the parents. If the parents, then when we take your comment, when the parents are married, then you bring a conflict into the relationship. So is that worth it to do it? No, it's not. So you have to delay. But if the parents are divorced, and the child goes from one parent to the other, all this custody agreement, then you decided what to do. Then other thing is you have to remind sometimes they are married in the church, the Catholic and the non-Catholic are married in the church. You have to remind the non-Catholic that the Catholic part made a promise at the time of marriage, and that's why the dispensation was granted, and that he is under that obligation, and that the other party agreed, because there was an agreement on the other party, that he or she was going to respect the faith of the Catholic, and that they were going to bring the children into the faith. So you have to remind that. And from that moment, things may cool up a little bit, but you have to find the right moment to do that. I will never advise you, just go ahead and do it. At least you have one, and if the other one doesn't want, no, just go and do it. Just kind of tend the waters a little bit before you make your decision. All right, so that's what we are going to say about the sacrament of baptism. So. So are you the DRE in your So what kind of situation did you find? Like you were bringing that comment that some grandparents bring their children for communion.
Yeah, most of the time they try to be sneaky though.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll come in and they'll say, I want to register my child, and so you start, they have this form, and then I'm like, I need a copy of your baptism certificate. Well, they put their name, so it matches the baptism certificate and that, but then when I call them that name, you can tell they kind of
hesitate.
and then I'm like, are you that person? Oh, well, I'm the grandma. Yeah, you can't.
You
The
can.
person needs to come.
Exactly.
I'll take this stuff and I'll hold it, but the parent needs to come in. Or it won't match.
Okay.
The grandparents will put their names, and so I'll say, do you have legal custody? Why is the name different on the baptism certificate? Well, I don't have legal custody, but they're staying with me. You have to have legal custody.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they work, they can't come in.
Yeah, or they work and they can't come in, I'm doing it for them. No, I'm sorry. So,
So,
I mean, they do try to be sneaky.
and then at that
So-
time, what age are we talking about? At the age of the children, what age are they?
Most of them are like 6, 7-year-olds.
Okay. So, but that after 7 years old, the child can request the sacrament by himself.
Oh, they
After seven.
Wow.
It doesn't happen too often in the parishes, but it happens very often in the schools. In the schools we program the children to receive their first communion and the confirmation, and we have these children. Sometimes they are baptized, sometimes they are not. And they see the whole class going through this, and they cannot. So, and some of them are very sincere and saying to the principal, I want to be baptized. I want to receive my first communion. And then we, the principal or whoever is coordinated in the school, they contact the parents, and the parents are not opposed, but they are not doing much to facilitate that process for the child. Then, in that particular case, because after 7 years old, they can request it.
Oh, I didn't know
Do they
that.
still need their parents' permission?
No, not after. Not
So
after.
if the grandparent is there and the 7 or 8-year-old is there,
It has to be 8, right?
Exactly. So.
Is it 8 or 7?
No, after 7 years.
after 7,
After
okay.
7. So if the child is requesting, but you have to check the parents. You have to check the intention of the parents. In the schools, we find out that the parents they don't want to be bothered. They don't care. They don't care. But in some children, we have been surprised how mature they come to request. That's it. When as a director of the program, or in the school, the principal, they make the decision to accept the child for that particular sacrament. It may happen in a parish too. You have to explore a little more on something.
So let's go through the 3 possibilities. A 7-year-old is at school and he requests baptism. Situation 1, the parents don't care. Situation 2, parents say good, and the situation number 3, the parents say no. So the parents have said no, the child requests baptism. Is the church going to give the child the baptism?
After 7 years old, the child is able to request baptism by himself.
I understand that he's able to request it,
Yes.
but would the church still give the baptism if the parents say no?
You have to check how extensive the conflict could be. You have to check that carefully. But if you administer the baptism to the child, it's a valid baptism.
So,
Because
so
after-
just by the child requesting it, you're gonna, because the guideline of them being raised Catholic.
Goes away.
How do you answer that one?
Because if the child's requesting it, then you just assume since he wants it, he's gonna pursue his faith, and that answers the
Well,
question.
you still need to
Investigate deeper?
no, you still have the need to find and sponsor.
Oh.
Yeah, you still have that need somebody that kind of support that the child is going to be supported. That part doesn't go away, so that part has to be in place. All right. Okay, so you see how many situations that can come from all this. Now let's move into the sacrament of confirmation, Canon 879. So where okay, it will come this way. Yeah, you can wait for us too. 879.
The sacrament of confirmation strengthens the baptized and obliges them more firmly to be witnesses of Christ by word and deed, and to spread and defend the faith. It imprints a character, enriches by the gift of the Holy Spirit the baptized continuing on the path of Christian initiation, and binds them more perfectly to the church.
What is the difficulty now with the sacrament of confirmation? It's more a practical difficulty than a spiritual or theological difficulty. It's celebrated at different times according to every diocese. So, and even here in our diocese, we have these different practices. You know, the cathedral does this confirmation for these very young children when they receive communion. You know, in other churches, they still require a certain age, and we have this diversity of practice. That's the difficulty that is still on, and I don't see it's going to be unified in one practice. Bishop Solis wanted to do it just one whole practice for the whole diocese, but it's still difficult.
How do they do it in Latin America?
When you have to be like a 10 years old, 10, 11, 12. You know, it's after you receive your first communion, the year anytime after that. Anytime after you receive your first communion, you can receive the sacrament of confirmation. So that more or less goes into that age, you know, 10, 11, 12. You know, I remember when I received my confirmation, I was pretty. I mean, I wasn't a little child. I was probably 12. So.
See, I was young, but I heard that, and then they moved to older, and I heard it's going backwards.
It's going backwards, exactly. It's going backwards. Now, regarding the young people, then it varies, you know, the different times, you know, and ages. But then it's all this large group that never receive confirmation. And the confirmation comes into play when they come to request the sacrament of marriage. So then we have these celebrations throughout the year, confirmation for adults, or we have the priest requesting permission to the bishop to celebrate confirmation in their parishes for one or two individuals at different times of the year. So that's the practical difficulty of the sacrament of confirmation. And then people argue historical points that in the past it was done when you were baptized, and then with time the two practices were kind of separated. So this is a very strong tendency. Some people argue that it should be together. However, we have it together when somebody is receiving to the church, and for the RCI program we have, they have to receive the sacraments of initiation in the Easter Vigil. So we have baptism, confirmation, and first communion. They have to be received at the same time. And any time when you baptize an adult, then then the priest can request that permission to administer the sacrament of confirmation at the same time. So,
As a DRE, it would be really nice if the diocese did say confirmation is at this time.
yeah.
Because people shop, well, at this parish,
Exactly.
at this
Two-year
parish,
program.
okay, then go to that parish.
And then some parishes have 1 year
1 year,
preparation,
you
or they
have
have, or they have 2. Yeah, no, it's a very tough call, but it would be nice if we can unify that. I mean, we are in kind of conversing on that a little bit, but it's going to be difficult. So let's read regarding sacrament of confirmation. Let's read Canon 883.
The following have the faculty of administering confirmation by the law itself. Within the limits of their territory, those who are equivalent to the law to the diocesan bishop. With regard to the person in question, the presbyter who by reason of office or mandate of the diocesan bishop baptizes one who is no longer an infant or one already baptized, whom he admits into the full communion of the Catholic Church. With regard to those in danger of death, the pastor or indeed any presbyter.
Can you also read Canon 891?
Oh. The sacrament of confirmation is to be conferred on all the faithful at about the age of direction, unless discretion. Unless the conference of bishops determines another age or there is danger of death or in the judgment of the minister or grave cause urges otherwise.
So the age of discretion, can you see it's very, leaves the door open for too many interpreters. Age of discretion can be 10 years old, can be 11, can be 15, you know. Some people never get discretion until they are older, 18, so it leaves the door. So,
The age of discretion is never an infant.
exactly, no, never.
Can't be.
No, exactly.
By that definition.
The age of discretion is always after 7.
Yeah.
It's always after 7. But many people never accomplish that discretion
Oh, yeah.
until very late in life.
But going back and putting confirmation on an infant in baptism,
Yeah.
that wouldn't fit this.
When
How does the infant receive first communion though?
They do in the Eastern Church, don't they? Don't they get involved in baptism and holy?
the Eastern churches that they all when they are babies
How did they give them first communion? Just
with a
a
little spoon.
Oh.
In those Eastern churches, this is the chalice and they mix it with the hose and it's the little spoon. It's very easy actually.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult. Yes. So
I was, referring to that infant confirmation. I do remember that I was maybe 7 years old when I was confirmed. And that was in the 50s, and that was done first. And then at the age of 10, I did my first communion.
oh, you did? Okay, good.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
so,
Yeah.
me, I was going, well, wait a second. I mean, later when I
Yeah.
realized what was happening, I thought, well, that was very strange, because I was dressed in a little Indian outfit, and there was a big, celebration at the santuario, sanctuary, that's what they called it.
Yes.
But I remember, that there was confirmation. And then I was surprised later when they said you still have to do communion. And then I had to dress in a suit and, everything, but it was later.
Yeah.
So that practice, I guess, went away, or, it's not, unless you're doing it, like you say, here at the cathedral, where you get your confirmation and your first communion
Yes.
together.
Well, that particular canon that she was reading, refers who can confirm. So the bishop of any other equivalent to the bishop. Then it refers the priest when they are receiving people into full communion into the church. So when a pastor celebrates the Easter Vigil, in the church. Then we have the candidates and the catechumens. The pastor has, according to the faculty of the diocese, have permission to confirm at that particular time, confirm anyone who he receives into the church. However, if the pastor wants to confirm someone in a different time of the year, if the person is an adult, then they have to request the permission from the bishop. That faculty is not extended throughout the year. It's only for the Easter vigil. Then we get into the problem that the only one that can confirm is the priest and not the deacon in matters of an Easter vigil. So, and that is something that is still there.
You answered my question.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
The deacons cannot confirm.
Deacons cannot administer the sacrament of confirmation or the sacrament of the anointing of the sick. However, I always argue this. If a deacon goes to the hospital, somebody is dying, and then you pray with the person, you bless the person, you may bless the person with water or with oil. Don't you think that spiritually speaking, that is going to cover the spiritual need of that person? Yeah. In the same way, if in a similar way, if it was the priest that goes do exactly the same and call it the anointing of the sick?
It was just minus confession.
Yeah, we can't hear this.
Exactly. I'm not going on confession. Exactly.
You did Vatican?
With- But if the person is truly repentant, you pray with them, you bless them, don't you think that's going to cover that part if the priest cannot be there? Don't you think? No.
Yes.
In practical terms, and so I always tell this deacon because I always tell them, don't feel that what you have done in the hospital in the absence of the priest is of a lower class, is of a different. No, it can be effective spiritually in exactly the same way, not necessarily sacramentally as the church has it established through the code of canon law, but spiritually speaking, it can be equally effective, and that's what we are looking for. So the person is accompanied at that particular time, repent for their sins, and prepare themselves to initiate that journey. So anyway, that's the way I interpret that. Now let's move to the next sacrament. So canon 897.
Wants to read me? I'll read. Okay. The most holy Eucharist is the most august sacrament in which Christ the Lord himself is contained, offered and received, by which the church constantly lives and grows. The Eucharistic sacrifice, the memorial of the death and resurrection of the Lord, in which the sacrifice of the cross is perpetuated over the centuries, is the summit and the source of all Christian worship and life. It signifies and affects the unity of the people of God and achieves the building up of the body of Christ. The other sacraments and all the ecclesiastical work of the apostolate are closely related to the Holy Eucharist and are directed to it. That was a mouthful.
So, can you read the commentary if there is any
No.
on the because this definition comes from the Second Vatican Council. So this definition of the sacraments that is adopted by the code came from one of the documents of the Second Vatican Council. I'm sure it's somewhere listed there. I'm sure it's from the.
Yeah, a little bit here.
So anyway, so that's the definition of the sacrament of the Eucharist. Then if we follow Canon 912.
Want me to read that? Father, or somebody else can read that?
good at it.
He was.